Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite the ones they hate. And in today's episode, we've got a manager who loses $30,000, a Karen boss whose own residents turn against her, and one smug boss fires the worker he absolutely hates, and the guy creates a $200,000 disaster. Guys, this one is so satisfying. So get comfy, grab a snack, a drink, something, and let's dive in. And remember, this voice should only be on the Dark Fluff YouTube channel, nowhere else. So a bunch of years ago, I worked in IT support at a big company, and we had 3 sections: desktop, server, mainframe. I was in mainframe. Desktop and server used a third-party ticketing system that included first-level support. Mainframe didn't use it often, but still had accounts to open and close tickets for the rare time we actually needed it. Well, one day, my desktop flakes out. So I called the help desk and I logged a ticket like any other user. A little while later, I get a call from the head of desktop, who was many levels above me. The guy was mad that I called the help desk. You see, he had to pay a bunch of money for my special support account, and he had to pay money every time someone called the help desk. The guy yelled at me for doing so, and long story short, he tells me in no uncertain terms that I was to never ever call the help desk. I was instead to log and direct my own tickets. I push back, pointing out that I wouldn't know where to direct the tickets in most cases. He responded via email that I could direct the tickets to any reasonable queue and that his people would figure it out. Thankfully, for me, he reiterated in email that I was to never ever call the help desk and I should instead log/direct all tickets. Now that that's all said, jump forward a few months. Each support function gets a bonus if they stay compliant with service levels throughout the year. 100% compliance gets you a bonus, less does not. Desktop is pushing hardest. The guy from above stands to get a $30,000 payout if they get 100% and 0 if they don't. In that job, Priority 1 tickets require a 15-minute response time, and any Priority 1 tickets that took over 15 minutes to respond to meant loss of bonus. One day, I'm working on a mainframe upgrade and my computer craps the bed again. Since the mainframe's down and I'm the only one available to bring it back up, it's a Priority 1 ticket. So I log into the ticketing system, properly enter my P1 ticket, and throw it into a reasonable queue, the general desktop support queue, and then I wait. The wait comes because I know the system doesn't specifically flag Priority 1 tickets. There's no alert, no warning, or push notification that tells you that a Priority 1 ticket has entered your queue. I was aware that the help desk manual required calling the queue owner for a Priority 1 ticket to get around this issue, but I couldn't call the help desk, remember? On top of that, I didn't have access to the handbook to know who to call, as I told the head of desktop earlier, so I just wait. I wait until the queue tells them at the 15-minute mark that they've just gone out of compliance. No 100%, no bonus, all gone. I get pulled into a conference call with the head of my division, the head of desktop, the CIO, and other bigwigs. Desktop demands to know why my ticket didn't route properly. I explain the above, and this is when desktop demands to know who told me not to call help desk. And I respond, "Why, you did, sir. You told me never ever to do so. I have the email right here. Would you like to refresh your memory?" This is when the CIO jumps in and they say, "I'd certainly like to see it." So I throw it up on the screen for all to see. The insistence that I never ever call the help desk, and my reminder that I don't know how to route the tickets, and his response to do, well, what I'd just done. Of course, The head of desktop tried to pin it back on me, but thankfully, my head, the CIO, and the other heads all recognized it was his fault, and they put the blame squarely on him. The guy lost his bonus, but also lost his job. Apparently, the guy had been an a-hole when dealing with others, and this was the last straw. And for reference, each call to the help desk cost about $6.50. His ban on me using the help desk would net the company about $39 a year in call charges, and it lost him about $30,000 in bonuses. And for clarification, he and the CIO were the only ones getting bonuses from this. None of the worker bees got anything. So nobody got effed by this except the idiot who did it and the guy who hired him. And honestly guys, this is exactly what happens when managers care more about power trips than common sense. But yeah, imagine trying to save the company $39 a year and accidentally saving them well over $60,000 in the end with both bonuses and you get fired. What a deal that was. And guys, this next short post, OP also teaches their boss a lesson. Listen to this one. A few years back, I worked in finance for a big brand, and my department was the weird one. We would do all sorts of different things, from customer complaints to cash collection and accounting. My manager, Karen, was an expert in her field, and she was very demanding. I was in charge of the biggest portfolio on the team, and I was quite busy every day. To top it off, you were assigned an inbox, and you were supposed to keep it up to date. 24-hour reply time max. And this is where the micromanagement starts. Karen would always go through the inboxes, and she would tell people to deal with this one or that email first, as that was urgent. And we still don't know how she would decide which emails were more important because it was pretty much always the same queries. But hey, power-tripping bosses, right? And the thing is, you had to drop anything you were doing and deal with her request immediately. One day, I get 5 different requests from her in the span of 5 minutes, which is no problem. I take the first one, and I work my way through them chronologically. Suddenly, this one instant message comes through, and she says, "Did you take care of request number 4 like I asked?" I reply, "I'm not there yet because I'm still on number 3. It was like 10 minutes after she sent those requests, and while easy, they still needed investigation. This is when she tells me that I need to do number 4 as soon as possible, and she shouldn't even have to tell me. Basically, I had to read her mind to know which one she wanted handled first. Being no psychic, I decided to do the next best thing. I would always ask her what she needed me to do first. I would check my inbox for the day, select the most sensitive emails, and then ask her which one she needed me to handle first. I did that for a week straight, and that's when I got told to deal with the inboxes how I normally do. Now that was a perfect malicious compliance, guys. Give the boss what they demand until they get sick of their own rule. And suddenly, the game isn't fun anymore, right? And in this next post, guys, since we're on a roll with power-tripping bosses, OP teaches their new Karen boss a much-needed lesson, and it's such a satisfying one. I work in a nursing home, and the one that I work in has gone through multiple members of management. And every time we get a new director of nursing, we have a mandatory meeting where he or she will introduce themselves and the new rules they put into place. One of my new bosses was Karen. She had the haircut, the attitude, and the shrill voice. The first rule that Karen set into place was that one nursing assistant had to be on the hall at all times. Absolutely no exceptions. We were seriously understaffed, so it wasn't always possible to always be on the hall. I of course tried to explain what the flaw was in her rule, and she does that I'm the dominant one head tilt, and she interrupts me to say, "Excuse me, but I'm the boss. You don't need to question my rules." The next rule that Karen set was there would be absolutely no cell phone usage in the facility. All cell phones had to be left in our vehicles or in a basket next to the time clock, no exceptions. This ticked off even the members of the administration. The reason being is the scheduler will text people to ask if they'll come into work. The nurses also use cell phones to communicate with the director and the director of nursing when they're not in the facility. People grumbled, but Karen yelled, "These are the rules. If you don't like it, you can find another job. Certified nursing assistants are a dime a dozen." And this is exactly what some of the nursing assistants did. We lost more than 4 people right after that meeting, making us even more understaffed. And this ticked me off because one of them was the best partner I've ever had. So here comes my malicious compliance and petty revenge. The first day I had to work alone after the meeting, I kept her words in mind. One certified nursing assistant on the hall at all times, no exception. One of our VIP residents hit the call light within 10 minutes of my shift, wanting some brownies from the kitchen. The kitchen's off the hall, so I go straight to Karen's office, which is luckily on my hall. And I say, "Karen, I'm the only aide here, and Miss Carr wants some brownies from the kitchen." And this is when Karen screams at me saying, "Why are you telling me? Just go get them for her." This is when I say to Karen, "You said there has to be one nursing assistant on the hall at all times. I can't leave the hall to go get them." Karen then says, "Then get another nursing assistant to go get them for you. Are you being serious here?" To which I respond, "You said we can't use cell phones, so I have no way to contact another aide." She just gets up from her desk in a huff and she gets the brownies. When she returns, she shoves the brownies into my hands and she screams at me saying, "Don't bother me for this petty mess again." To which I thought, okay, even more compliance. Because she was stubborn, this malicious compliance went on for a few hours, so I'll shorten it into a list. No residents were harmed during the malicious compliance. Also, keep in mind that this all happened within one shift. I work on a very demanding hall with nearly 40 people on it. And before you say there shouldn't be one certified nursing assistant to 40 people, trust me, I know. 3 residents wanted washcloths or towels, but I didn't have any, so I couldn't go get them one. 5 more residents wanted snacks from the kitchen, but I was the only nursing assistant and I couldn't get them any. 2 residents wanted showers, which I could have done, but I wasn't allowed to leave the hall to find an aide to watch mine while I did it. The trash stunk like holy hell, but I couldn't leave the hall to take it out, so it stunk up the hallway and Karen's office, and I may have moved the trash bin closer to her door. I also couldn't pass out ice water because I couldn't leave the hall to get the ice cart. And when supper trays came out, I couldn't leave the hall to go get it. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face when I knocked on her door and I told her that getting the residents fed shouldn't count as a petty mess. So I needed her to go get the trays. Luckily, Karen was staying late and this didn't last longer than this one day. The residents kept complaining and finally, Miss Red, our nosiest resident who crashed the mandatory meeting, led a lot of the complaining residents to Karen's office. One of those residents was Miss Carr, and she yelled at Karen so loud because she couldn't get her ice that people started peeking around the corner to see what was going on. Karen tried her hardest to defuse the situation and explained to Miss VIP why the rule was in place, but Miss Carr was having none of it. Karen didn't know that Miss Carr used to be a nurse, and that's why the director of the facility made her a VIP. After her tongue lashing, Karen comes up to me seething with anger, and she had tears in her eyes. Through her gritted teeth, she screams at me and says, "You can leave the hall as long as it pertains to patient care." She then slams her office door so hard it knocked stuff off her shelf. I just heard Karen saying, "Oh crap," on the other side of the door after the crash. She didn't last much longer after this because the facility had a lot of demanding residents and an even more demanding director. I don't know what was happening on the admin side, but I do hear horror stories all the time about it. And for your information, when it came down to things the residents were requesting but I couldn't get, I was going to get them anyways once Karen left. Karen tended to stay until 8 o'clock sometimes, and the day I worked alone happened to be one of those days. What a beautiful ending to that post, and this is the kind of malicious compliance I love so much. OP didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't break any single rule. They just followed Karen's instructions so perfectly that all the residents turned against her and made her cry, guys, and that is rare. So I hope this story isn't too long, but it is a little convoluted. It also happened during the little virus that shall not be named that caused a lot of chaos around the world. I worked for 5 years as a federal contractor, and I eventually rose through the ranks through blood, sweat, and tears to a low-level supervisor. I managed a team of 13 working 2 federal contracts. Both contracts were new, and I was supposed to make them successful so the contracts would be renewed. In short, the second contract was going badly. The agency flooded us with work, and my boss refused to ask them to slow it down, and that was literally his only job. As a result, late work begins piling up and costing the company lots of money. We did our best to keep up, which in reality meant a lot of unpaid overtime for me. And then, things only got worse. Long story short, we went through the crisis, with my staff asking almost daily if there would be layoffs, and my boss's response to them was, "We don't know." To me, the answer was my job was secure, but the others weren't. If the contract failed, he said I'd have a place on another team. Obviously, the contract failed. My boss personally fired me and most of my team. I learned who was staying and who was going by talking with each of them personally. No one knew it was going to happen to them until it happened, and they were all shocked that I was fired as well. After firing me, my boss had the stones to call and ask me the next day if I would, quote, help him end the contract on a high note. And I also want to note, I got fired 2 weeks before my official last day because that company is run by sadists. I told him that I would do my job. As a proud Slytherin, I immediately began doing everything I could, within the rules of course, to send my fired staff home in the best shape possible. We all knew our unused PTO would cash out, but sick time wouldn't. So everyone was sick those last 2 weeks, and my boss ends up doing most of the work himself. I was immediately hired by another federal contractor, and I brought my best former employee along with me. She and I end up poaching about a dozen employees from our former employer, who eventually threatened to sue her if she headhunted anyone else. I'm proud to say that our revenge-fueled efforts had taken so many of their good employees that the company ends up openly failing, and soon they went out of business. And to that I say, good riddance, and that's karma for you. Like firing your most loyal workers and then expecting them to help save the company afterwards is actually insane, baffling behavior. But seriously, I have to respect OP for leaving and then poaching the best employees. Like, if the company wants to treat people like they're disposable, then they can't be shocked when all the best employees disappear. So here's a little backstory. This is a story about 2 people named Sam and Murad. My manager Sam is an extremely chill and an outstanding leader. His manager Murad is a stickler for the rules. I work as an infrastructure and configuration manager and happen to be one of the more expensive resources on the project from my domain. This story also takes place January 2023. The company was undergoing some restructuring, and most of our contracts included a last-in, first-out clause by default. When I joined in March 2022, I took a 10% pay cut to remove the last-in, first-out clause from my contract because I was seeking job stability. Although I was still earning more than I did in my previous job, it was only 20% more instead of 30%. So with that said, on to the story. As the infrastructure manager, I'm responsible for maintaining all the product licenses and project uses. One of these product licenses requires a digital signature to function. Typically, such tasks require the use of service accounts which are owned by users. When someone leaves the organization, their service accounts are automatically transferred to their manager. Unfortunately, service accounts can't have digital signatures, so I had to use mine in this case. The product activation process involves using the corresponding digital signature certificate, and since I already had one for tax purposes, I decided to reuse it instead of obtaining a separate one. In India, these are encrypted and they require a one-time password from my mobile number each and every time they're used. This mobile number must be associated with my national ID, and that's how most encryption services work in India. So that said, Sam was on vacation, his first in 5 years. Apart from taking a one-day leave in 2018, when he moved from India to Europe, the guy had never even taken a sick day. He recently got married, and for his honeymoon, he took a 2-month vacation to travel all over Europe with his new wife. In his absence, Murad was overseeing the project. Management asked Murad to cut 15% of his workforce. Now, a thing about Murad is the guy never liked me, so the inevitable happened. I was called into a meeting with Murad and HR. He then asked me to voluntarily resign or else I'd be let go. Now, this is a tactic that companies in India often use, as firing is considered a much bigger deal than simply losing a job. It's a cultural thing, I suppose, as being fired carries a stigma that most people want to avoid. HR usually tries to persuade people to resign voluntarily, so it doesn't become public knowledge that they were fired. This tactic often works well, as resigning saves the company from having to pay 3 months' salary. However, I knew better, so I refused his request. Murad was quite taken aback by this. Since I had called his bluff, he had to double down to show he meant business. By the end of the day, I received my termination email with instructions on how to return the company property I had. And here's the malicious compliance. I replied to the email asking to schedule the return of the laptop promptly, as I needed to leave the city for a few days, which was a fake excuse. My objective was to have them pick up my laptop from my place and format it as soon as possible. This will be important later. By the end of the week, my laptop was picked up. I had already backed up a copy of my digital security certificate, so there were no issues on my end. Fast forward to mid-February and there was an issue with the product. A support ticket was raised and the support team wanted to upgrade to the next version, as this was a known bug that had been resolved in the next version. The product was used once a week to create a weekly report, but nobody really looked at it except for Sam, who was still on vacation, so its absence wasn't likely to be noticed for at least a full month. The end of the month report would bring it to upper management's attention. Now here's the thing. Support's standard operating procedure requires a license check. Hence, it requires decryption of the existing license. Long story short, I receive a call asking for the digital signature certificates and the one-time passwords, and I reject it. Murad was eventually informed, who asked the support team to provide a new license. The product support team informed him that they can't provide a new license without the company purchasing one, and the cost for this product was $200,000. At this point, Murad decided that they could live without the report. He mostly handled the team side of the project, so he wasn't really aware of the impact of this report. Sam returns from vacation at the end of February. By the first week of March, he noticed the missing weekly report and he promptly calls me. That's when I inform him that Murad had fired me. Sam was quite perplexed, to say the least. Unlike Murad, he knew that the current license needed my security certificate to work, so he asked if my certificate was available. This is when I told Sam that my laptop had a copy, but it was taken. He checked the system, and sure enough, the laptop had been formatted. He then asked if there was any way to resolve the issue. I informed him that even if there were a way, I couldn't help him without being an employee. He then asked me to wait for a few days. There is a quarterly meeting that takes place in the middle of every third month, attended by the CEO and top brass. At the March meeting, everyone notices the missing report. The CEO asked why this important project was missing the report. This is when Sam informed him, along with the 90 people on the call, that a key person had been let go, and the report can't be prepared without spending $200,000 on a new license. Now, I heard the recording of this call after rejoining, so I'll share the relevant conversation below. The CEO asked if this is related to the termination, and Sam tells him yes. The CEO then asked, well, why wasn't this person's work backed up? Why was he on the last in, first out list if he was so key to the project? Sam tells him he wasn't on the last in, first out list. This is when Murad jumps in and he says he joined less than a year ago. He must be on that list. The CEO says, let's discuss this offline after the call. Now, I don't know what transpired in the office meeting, but 2 days later, I receive a call from the head of HR offering me my job back. I was quite shocked, and I asked for the following. Number 1, a 100% raise and promotion to the next level. Number 2, out of the last in, first out, obviously. Number 3, permanent work from home mentioned in the contract. Number 4, I keep the termination payout. And lastly, since it'll be counted as a new job in my profile, I requested a joining bonus, which is 20% of annual salary. I join back at the 3rd week of March. I receive a brand new laptop within 30 minutes of joining, hand-delivered to my home by someone from IT in my city. It took me 10 minutes to decrypt the license using my backed up security key, and 30 minutes to upgrade the product to the next version. By the end of lunch, the CEO had the report in hand. I also want to add that my newly promoted role offers a 60% increase in my medical insurance, a take-home company car, and the option to purchase company stock and lots of other upgrades. I personally thanked Murad on my first week back for the promotion in a team-wide call. The same 90 people, minus the top brass and the CEO. And I only wish you could see the look on his face. Yeah, I bet Murad loves OP even more now, guys. And this right here is why bosses should probably triple check before firing someone, especially if the reason is I don't really like you. Like, firing somebody for that reason alone is already such an a-hole thing to do. But to get rid of someone who holds that much power, holy moly, like OP's boss really turned a firing into a promotion, a raise, a bonus, and they got humiliated in the end. What a mistake that was, and what a huge win for OP. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r / malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r / entitled People episode, where a psycho Karen threatens their ex-boss, and the guy ends up getting huge amounts of jail time. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.